All right. One second.
All right, so we're live. Okay, so I'm gonna wait just a couple of seconds while some more folks jump in, so we can start.
Sounds good.
I'm starting my scope.
Yeah, me too. I've got it. Perfect. And I'm hoping to take some questions as well from folks in on Scope, and we'll see how it goes. Okay. Perfect. All right, so we'll wait a couple more seconds.
Hey,
All right.
everybody.
All right, thanks for jumping in, everyone. We're going to go ahead and start. We have a really fun, debate set up already. We've got Brian Fanzo, who is Chief Evangelist for Broad Suite Media Group, and he's a huge influencer. We're very excited. We're very excited to have him here.
Excited to be here.
Good. And then we also have Robert Stern, the social leader, and a lot of you guys know him from Periscope as well. So,
how you doing, everybody?
Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and start. It's going to be kind of a debate format, so I'll be asking a few questions, moderating, but like I said, I'll let Brian and Robert just kind of talk about things that are going on with Meerkat and Periscope. And the focus of the debate is the rise and the future of both Meerkat and Periscope. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first question for you guys.
Awesome.
Which is going to be, okay, so we've got these two amazing apps that everyone's talking about. You know, if you haven't heard of them, you've probably been under a rock. But you know, we've got the apps. Okay, so can they coexist, or is the success of one going to mean the failure of the other? So
I'm going to let Brian go first. Age before beauty, since I'm older.
All right, sounds good. No, I mean, I think they actually need each other to for the future of the tools. I think I've talked about it a lot, but I think competition breeds faster innovation. I think the idea of not only two different communities, but really two different looks on a very similar type of medium. And because this is so new, I mean, live streaming's not new, but the mobile aspect and the integration with social and really the bridging of using the technology, I think having both of them, not only from a competition perspective, but also from a perspective of you know, two different types of communities, but I think they have kind of unique value, although both being released in such a short time frame. So for me, I think it's important. I actually think there'll probably be a third one in the game by the time the summer is over that will you know, be just as competitive. I mean, if you think about it, back in the day, I mean, Google, I think, was the 22nd search engine ever to come onto the market. So if we think of it that way, where Google's at now compared to, you know, the days of Dogpile and early AOL and Yahoo, I think it puts the things into perspective that I think we are super early, but I think it's super important to have both of these for sure.
I agree with Brian on this, that competition is needed for this for both of them to excel. And I do think there's going to be other people that join into the format. What I see is one is going to supersede the other, and the other one's going to pick up, and then they're going to start to fight back and forth. The real question is going to come in if a third or fourth one comes in. Are they going to be able to keep up with the technology, or are they going to use that technology with the live streaming to go in another direction? Because, you know, I mean, you got to think about it. Prior to 3 months ago, you know, live streaming's been out before, but it really never caught on. And now it's like the biggest thing in the world. Mm-hmm. So where it's going to go from here is going to determine how the companies are going to succeed. Periscope's got its Media Blitz, which has been fantastic for them, but Meerkat has some better technology to it down the line that could not necessarily go above Periscope, but at the same time is going to make Periscope keep thinking ahead. And with that, you know, there's always somebody who jumps ship and says they got a better idea, and now a third or a fourth one opens up, and it becomes a market, and it's actually good for everybody because, you know, people like competition. I mean, if we only had one clothing store, what would it be like? So we need those other companies.
I also think it's important from the standpoint of, I mean, let's be real here. I mean, Twitter has changed my life, changed my world, and the fact that Twitter is backing Periscope is huge. But also, that's a limitation if you think of it that way. And I think the ability to be integrated and cross, I talk about bridging communities, because I think the strong suit of these tools is the fact that I didn't have to go create a new LO. I didn't need to go create another, you know, it actually leverages and pushes to my existing hard work. I already have put hard work into other things. And I think there's going to be another, you know, other apps. I wouldn't be surprised, you know, Google Hangouts, thank you, finally pushed out a new update today for Chrome, but I think Hangouts is still way behind the times. I wouldn't be surprised if they had their own version. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, even from an Instagram Vine perspective with the 8-second clips, or even, you know, someone in the Snapchat space. I think there's lots of area for innovation, and I think there's people that are going to look at the Twitter one as, you know, hey, they have the backing of Twitter, and Twitter is huge, but at the same time, we know that Twitter will never integrate the social graph of LinkedIn per se for Periscope. So for me, I think today, right now, Periscope's big advantage is Twitter, and the fact that Twitter is the backing and owns them. But I think the limitation for that, and where other companies will see a play, is the fact that, hey, why don't we pull the Facebook social graph, or why don't we integrate into Facebook a way that actually does like its embedded videos? So I think we are early, but I agree, Robert. It's kind of not only is it important that we have both, but I think it's something that we're going to see the growth of this, because the proof of concept is there. I'd say for the most part, some people still haven't figured out how to find value on this, and that was what my rant was yesterday afternoon. But I'm excited for the future of these apps for sure.
Definitely. And now that you're talking about value, Brian, let's talk a little bit about that, because I've been talking to certain folks, and they're just like, what's Periscope? They don't even know. They're like, do brands even have to be in there? So what is y'all's take on the value that this brings to brands?
After you, Robert.
Oh, okay. This time me?
Yeah.
You know, this brings a lot of value to brands, and unfortunately, talking with brands, they over-strategize sometimes. It's important to have the strategy of how you're going to use a new social media product of some kind, but everybody holds back a little bit in the beginning because you're just not sure if it's going to catch on. Is it a fad? Is it something like that? Me personally, I'm pushing all my clients to do this because I see the value of giving out information, giving out the information sellers, buyers, clients, people want, and it's a now time situation instead of going and researching and everything else that's involved. What's great about it is that for startups and for other companies, you can tell your story. You can give information about your company. I know Brian was on a call earlier in the week, and he said something that really hit hard, was that companies can now show their company's, I forgot the way you said it, Brian, but you know, everybody talks about their culture in their company. And now you can show it. You can talk with employees in the company. You can show the offices, show the stores, everything else. Whereas before, you just read about it. Hey, we have this wonderful culture. Hey, we do these types of things. Hey, we're community involved. But now it's like you can show it, and it's live. And that value will take it 10 times further for people to understand and maybe even bring a little bit of brand loyalty to the company.
No, I agree. And I think when we're talking about this, and you know, part of my rant yesterday was someone told me, like, you know, that these tools are kind of a passing fad and there's not much growth available to them. You know, and I was challenging that, and they said, you know, why aren't more people on here? And I think it's the scary part of not only are people afraid to be real, but there's so much fakeness out there. There's so much people that have a cloak, and they have the curtain, and they say they have a good company culture. They care about their community. They want to humanize their brand. They want to create content that helps. But at the end of the day, they don't give a crap about any of those things. And you know, they've been able to kind of hide behind this idea that broadcasting and one-way billboards and a lot of these things. And I think the reason this technology scares so many of them is because you can't fake it. There is no automation. There's no easy button here. You have to trust your employees if you're going to give employees access to this. And I think that scares a lot of brands, but that's also a chance for brands that actually have value, aren't faking it, to prove their worth. And I think, I called out politicians, and I'll call out politicians from now until the election. Every politician says they're human, they're not like everybody else, they think for themselves, they're gonna make a difference. Well, I don't believe any of them unless they can jump on something like this, answer questions, be real, prove that you don't need your PR team to hand you a speech. Because I'm writing a blog post that goes live on Monday, and I just finished this part of it. And for me, it was a big deal. Anybody can be given a presentation or a speech and go up and read it off the prompters. But can you actually engage with people that are asking you questions? And yes, there'll be trolls and there'll be haters, but if you can't deal with that, don't tell me you'll be able to deal with Washington in the first place. So for me, I think brands, if you're self-aware, if you know what you know, and if you know what you don't know, and you really truly want to humanize and talk with the community, not at the community, you'll start embracing live streaming technology. And I think the companies that get on here, you saw Applebee's do the thing on Times Square earlier this week or later last week. We've seen Mashable and ESPN Sports Center, even some of the brands I would have never expected from a global perspective have embraced it. So I think we need to get over the idea that we're afraid to fail and maybe start embracing the idea that we want to find better ways to provide value to our customers, and I think there's no better way than being real on a live stream, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, totally agree with you, Brian. Totally agree with you. And I actually think it's going to be huge. If they use it properly during the elections and the campaign trail, this is going to be huge. So, Robert.
Oh, I thought I started. No, but I agree with Brian what he's saying. It's brands need to get off the chair, get out of the production meetings, and literally turn around and start acting and doing and showing the information. Brands hold back a lot, and that causes a problem. And then sometimes they miss the boat, and they're trying to catch up a little bit. Like Brian had said about Applebee's and the other ones. Why do I get the feeling? Am I being heard?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. My picture disappeared.
I can see you.
No, but I saw early on, like Taco Bell, they did that like Saturday Night Live skit in the news and stuff, and I know they got more coming out. MasterCard is working with some restaurants to do some things. These are amazing ideas, and it kind of brings you back to the old TV commercials. Think of the old Folgers. I know I'm older than you guys, but think of the old Folgers commercials where they kind of hit a heart and get to people. And I think that's going to be what the key to scoping or meerkatting is going to be. Hit target markets with your type of thing. Kathy, you're even doing some things that I love where you're doing, because you're able to speak Spanish, you're doing them in 2 different languages. And now that's hitting a niche market that people like Brian and I couldn't even get to. Unless Brian knows a Spanish or another language that I don't know about. But
I struggle with English, and I talk fast in that language to begin with. I will default to Kathy for sure on that one.
Thank you, guys.
Well, and one of the things for me, I think there's also, when you think about these brands and you're thinking about how people are using it, I can't wait till we get to the day where people that get on streams and are looking for value are focused on the value that someone says more than just asking for help with the tools, right? And I'm sure, Robert, you hear that as much as I do. Is I feel like there's some great value to be had on this tool, but there's also so many people that aren't, I would say, haven't figured out how to experiment with it faster. And a couple friends here on the Meerkat, shout out to those that are watching on Meerkat as well. They were saying it does take some time to get used to it, how the scheduling works, and one of the things I think for a lot of people from Periscope perspective is like, how do you make the thumbnail? Like some of these like basic things that you can't do your initial shot off of your front camera. You can only have to do it off your back camera. So I think once the technology kind of, and I've been saying this for a while, once Periscope has Android and once both apps have 2.0, once we have a 2.0 version for all of them, because we're at 1.4 for Meerkat and 1.1 for Periscope. Once they have a 2.0 release, then I think we're going to move away from people that are asking questions about how they can use this technology in every single chat, and moving into the sense of, okay, what is this guy providing? What's the value they're doing? What is she doing? And I think that's the exciting part, because I still feel like it's the early days of Google+. I mean, I felt like every time I got on Google+, no matter what my post was, everybody asked me, well, how'd you do this? Why'd you use this hashtag? How'd you do that? So I think, we're exciting times, but I think we do have to put a little bit of brakes on sometimes, because it does seem like we get pinged nonstop, no matter what the title of the stream is. People want to ask questions about the actual streaming technology, or I can tell you every time I jump on Periscope, I have a whole bunch of people that jump on there and say Meerkat sucks, because they know I'm on the Meerkat leaderboard, and I've been on Meerkat since March 2nd. So I'll be happy when that gets over and people just kind of embrace it and realize that I'm doing both. I have Periscope on my iPhone 6 Plus right now, and my iPad mini I have Meerkat running. So for me, I'm excited for that time.
That's good. That's good. Robert, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I was going to say, because I know Brian does both, and I remember, oh God, I remember, I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago when Brian was on another scope, and somebody had said, Meerkat is dead. And oh my God, I thought Brian was going to have, his head was going to explode on Periscope live. He's laughing, I know.
Yes, no, you're right. No, well, for me, it was, I have a real big problem. This isn't actually just Meerkat and Periscope, but I have a big problem today in the technology space and really in the social media space, that so many people are willing to bash something that not only they don't understand, but they're not even willing to try it out. And I called out a Wall Street Journal article the 2 days after Periscope came out, when the guy wrote literally, Meerkat is dead, don't ever sign up for it. And so I did my own research, and he had never signed up or used Meerkat one time. The person who wrote the article that claimed that, and I don't usually put people on blast, but I put them on blast because I think that's ridiculous. And we're talking about authenticity. And I also believe that you're not proving anything by claiming one is dead over the other, because I don't think that is the true conversation we need to have. And honestly, I don't even care which one you watch me on. I have a lot of people that kind of follow between the two, but there's a reason for me is that it's like, hey, go where you want to go. I don't feel like I am that knowledgeable. I mean, I've done 250 on Meerkat and about 150 on Periscope, but I still don't feel like I know everything and the value for each one more than everyone else. But I want to present the options, and the reason I do both, even the big joke was when I was walking around IBM event this past week, everyone's like, well, how do you have both of these together? And I bought a sticky iPhone case that stuck to the front of my iPad mini so that I could hold it with one hand, and the cameras were right over each other, so I could walk around and I could still see the comments, because I think that if you forget about the comments and the engagement, you're missing the platform. But that's what I did, and I felt like, for me, I don't need to have 80 people on one and 0 on the other. If I have 40 and 40, that means just as much to me as 80 and 0. And I know there's a couple people on Periscope that disagree just from a hearts and I guess a influence perspective. I'm not going to have, because I am okay with segmented audience, I'm going to lose some of that stuff. But I truly believe in providing the value, and the influencer ranking and all of those type of things will come along, as we kind of embrace the technology as a whole. So I didn't know if I know I kind of ranted on that. Is there other questions that came in, Kathy, or
yeah, we had some questions actually. Now that you're talking about hearts and the leaderboard and things like that, what are y'all's thoughts on hearts, or likes or what have you, in regards to followers? Like, what's the value in this? What's important? What should people be focusing on? So I'll go to you, Robert.
Well, I mean, people in my scopes know, when they come into my scopes, and I don't even ask for hearts. I mean, that's like the last thing I ask for. I'll see the hearts coming up, and I'll say, thanks, guys, thanks for the hearts. And to me, the hearts mean, like, if I was in front of one of my public speaking things, and I said something that a light bulb went off, and they clapped. So it's kind of like an audience appreciation. They're liking what you're saying. They're agreeing with what you're saying. They're applauding you. The heart system in Periscope, in my opinion, is flawed. And when I say it's flawed, is people are trying so hard to be on that, quote, beloved board thinking that it's going to get them more followers and more everything else. Where I think Brian would agree, it's more about your content, because I want to give good information that's going to make other people want to hear me and talk with me and get ideas from me, versus be on the beloved board so that they can say they follow me. The heart system, I understand how Kayvon and the crew came up with it, and it was about the liking and applauding and making the broadcaster feel good. I just don't like how it's with certain scopers being used, that you have the sign above you that says tap for hearts. They have heart contests.
Right, and I think you can't fix stupid, and you can't really help when some people are trying to gamify the system, right? I'm a big proponent that, you know, gamification and people are going to find a way around it. But for me, I love the hearts for nonverbal cues, right? It's giving you that feedback that people can't, you know, on Meerkat. If you type in the comment section one emoji, their icon across the top turns into that emoji. So it's a very similar nonverbal cue. My thing is, and my recommendation to anyone on the Periscope team that would be listening to this, is actually I love the hearts to evaluate the value of that individual Periscope. So I think if you have a lot of hearts on a live broadcast, one live broadcast while you're doing it, that should push it up the feed. But then those hearts should not overall have any impact on you being a great scoper or providing great value. The fact that people share your broadcast should. Because here's the thing. Anyone can tap on that screen 500 times and tell me that's a great broadcast. But if I'm truly providing value, they're going to go and yell and tell their friends. And that is the difference. It's much like a retweet and a favorite, right? The favorite doesn't go out to everybody, and I don't have like on Twitter, I don't have a whole thing, I don't have a clout score. It says you've received this many favorites today, right? Because the favorite it's just like I call favorite as an acknowledgement, right? I even have a blog post that said favorite is like a fist bump, right? And I think of hearts like, hey, yes, thumbs up, keep going. This is. But I think when we're talking about, hey, when someone provides value, does it make them scream from the rooftops to their friends, swipe to the left, hit share broadcast, and share to my followers? If they do that, push them on the leaderboard, put them the most beloved. But I tell you what, and the fact that you can have more than one, I manage 8 Twitter accounts for my own personal brand. What would stop me from logging into my other one and giving myself my own hearts? Like those kind of things. I mean, and to your point, Robert, I agree. Here's my request and my things for the whole part is, give hearts because you actually find the content valuable, and then share it because you want your friends to get in there. But if you're a scoper, I say I have no problem you asking people to share it with your friends, because to me that means more people can gain value. By asking for hearts, you're selfish. And I think when hearts come in, thanking them is really cool, because I think it's still part of this nonverbal cue. But I agree. I mean, I had a guy that was on here that we had a very, I'd say, discussion would be not the right term, but he was giving away things and willing to, hey, I will follow whoever gives me the most hearts in the next hour. And I was like, wow, you've just devalued every one of your followers, because apparently you only follow people that are into your self-illusion of what means to you. So I think going back, and I agree with the hearts, I agree with nonverbal cues. I mean, nobody's a professional streamer here. I mean, let's be real. I mean, I've done video blog for a year, I've done video, but I am by far, I talk with my hands, I talk too fast, I jump around, but it is nice to get that feedback. All of a sudden you're on a rant. Like last night I was on that rant, all of a sudden the hearts started flowing in, right? And it was multiple different colors, and for me it was like, keep going. I'm getting that view that people are like, dude, we're with you, we hear you. And it's kind of the opposite when you get no hearts and you're like, well, I guess I need to change the subject, or maybe do a dance or something. But I think the hearts are valuable. I just think they're doing them wrong when it's the valuation on how they're putting them on the leaderboard.
And just to add on it real quick, the heart system's going to change once Android hits, because there are a whole bunch of superstars that are waiting to come on here because they got their Samsung and they got these other phones and they don't have the iPhone, and they're going to come on. I mean, come on. Oprah Winfrey's going to sneeze one time and she's going to get 2 million hearts. I mean, it's going to change everything on it. So,
and I agree, and I think that also comes into a fact where, I'm on the leaderboard for Meerkat, and I I will always admit the reason I'm on the leaderboard for Meerkat is I was an early adopter. I'm a fear of missing out, advocate. I always jump on technology early, and I happen to be in South by Southwest for 8 days. And you know what? There's definitely a fear of missing out. And when I did every morning I got out of the Uber and I did a preview of my day, I had 390 people watching me every single day for every Meerkat I did. But the fact that I was on the leaderboard, it helped me build up my initial following. But being on the leaderboard is not the goal. Like you said, Madonna did one thing on Meerkat and was #1 on the leaderboard. Right? There's other people that are providing unique value. What I focus on is I want to be on the leaderboard of my followers so they don't unfollow or turn off my notifications. Because I think that's the key here. I think if you start polluting their feed, because the shock value is cool. I like people that are doing all these unique things. But here's the deal. Eventually, no one's going to tune in if you're not providing value. And if you're wasting their time, we all get 24 hours a day. If you're Oprah Winfrey or you're Robert or Kathy or Brian, you get 24 hours a day, and you want people that respect that and value your time, which means they're going to provide value. And I don't care what that value is. I've talked about this a lot, and I'm going to keep hitting it home because I have to defend something. If you understand your audience and you provide what they're looking for, you're winning. And I don't care if that means if Nora is on Meerkat and she has an audience that knows what she wants and she provides value for them. It's to me the problem is people throw stones at that kind of concept, yet they don't even listen to what their audience wants. And I think if my audience, for me, if I'm on the leaderboard of my audience, that sounds very corny in the sense, but for me that's what I want. I want people that say, Brian, I have no reason to unfollow you, and when I get that notification that says Brian is live, and I have I'm not sitting in a meeting, I'm going to click it to see what you're talking about. That's the leaderboard. I think you're right. I think Periscope. I know Periscope's missing half of their audience. Over half of their audience probably from Android. The Meerkat streams when Android beta came out and then when Android went full on Meerkat was, talking about a burst. It was like a shot of steroids into the Meerkat community because all of a sudden all these people that had been watching and engaging but really not actually fully being able to stream themselves all of a sudden had access. And it was kind of like Christmas, even for me as an iPhone user, because I was able to see so many different views and ways of using this technology. So I can't wait and I really hope that it comes out this month for Android for Periscope. I really think that's powerful.
Awesome. And guys, I'm going to take a question that someone just asked on Periscope. They're asking, how many times a day are you guys scoping or meerkatting? Do you guys recommend any certain amount of times, or how much are you guys doing this? So I'll go with Robert.
It's a touchy question because it depends on what you're scoping about. I'm telling my clients, you should be at least doing it once a day, just to have something in your replay list on a marketing situation, because then at least people have something to go to if they're seeing it, and there's always something in there, the replay list, that's even just on the bottom when they're in the local area because they're following you. There's always something there. So, personally, me personally, I go anywhere from 3 to 5. It depends what's going on. And I actually still follow, kind of like what I did with social media as a general rule, Facebook and everybody else, that 80-20 rule. Because, the big brands are going to be straight business. But the little brands, the little startups, the small, medium companies that are in town, or they handle North Jersey like where I'm living, or they can handle other stuff. I have fun on here also. I'll do my scopes during the daytime, maybe one early evening about social media tips and all that stuff. And then I'll also throw in, like tonight on Friday night, my daughter and I do a game night for our followers. Last week we did Pictionary. But you know what it is? It's making it human. So you have to regulate in your mind how much you want to scope. I personally can see maybe 2 or 3 a day is a good number because you don't want to over-scope, because depending what you're going to be talking about, you got the life scopers out there, you got the people trying to do business, you got the people that are just going on it to talk to people, which is a huge side of this right now. I'm not sure how much on the Meerkat side, but on Periscope I see people that are very shy and people that are not into big crowds or anything. They're opening up on Periscope, which is an amazing feature for them because it's actually going to improve themselves which down the line, business-wise, everything else will work for them.
No, yeah. So I have a philosophy on this. It's much like Twitter. Everyone asks me, you know, I tweet more often than most people, without question. I overtweet. I actually teach people how to unfollow me and put me on a Twitter list so that they aren't polluted with my my icon sitting in their entire feed. But here's the thing: nobody will ever say you're providing too much value and you're helping me too much. And that sounds corny, but I think when you start thinking about how often, and I like your philosophy and I like the strategy, because to me, real-time streaming does not give you an excuse not to have a strategy. Just because it's real-time doesn't mean you don't have an idea of why you're getting on here or what your strategy. Mark Shaw just jumped into my Periscope, you know, and I think Mark does a much more frequent Periscope or scope than a lot of other people do it. But what he's trying every time is he's providing value. Mark is jumping in there, having dialogue, engaging with people. I think if you focus on always trying to provide value and great content and let your audience dictate, because one of the things for me is finding the right time zone. It's funny because everyone kind of knows that I don't sleep. Sleep has never been a thing for me. But yes, and Mark just said always have an end game. But you know what? The craziest thing, my most successful Periscopes have been after midnight here on the Pacific West Coast. Because I have a very big audience on Twitter in the UK and Australia, and it's perfect time for them. And honestly, I don't have to deal with all the big names that are in there because they're all at home sleeping. You know, like so for me, part of this is let your community dictate, but don't be afraid to do a couple in a day. Or, you know, I do 4 Google Hangout Lives a week for part of my job. So I stream all 4 of those every single week. So people know consistently. If you want to know every time, I have a 4 p.m. on Mondays. I have, you know, 9 p.m. on Wednesdays. I have noon on Thursdays. They know that. So it's almost like appointment real time for that sense. But there's also the times where I'm at an event, or last night I got off a client phone call. Gary Vaynerchuk's video was playing on my Facebook feed, and it was about, you know, self-awareness. And I said, you know what? I'm going to turn on Periscope and Meerkat, and I'm just going to talk to my audience and kind of explain what I was feeling. And Robert, I think you had a great point there, and I didn't want to bury that. Not only knowing your audience, but expressing yourself. If you have one viewer and you impact that one viewer, you're winning. Because so many people will get on here and have 500 viewers and have no value, make no impact. When that person, when you sign off the stream, they didn't say, my life is different, you didn't make me more entertained. So I think for me, you know, my social philosophy, it's a hashtag I use, I call show you care. And the reason I say show you care is because I don't want people to say that, you know, they get on something because I'm a celebrity, but I want them to get on something because I care, and when they leave, they'll remember me because I care. And I think no matter what your philosophy is, what your strategy, what your target audience. I mean, I'm working with a brand right now, so I got a tattoo for those that I streamed my tattoo getting done at a tattoo parlor, right? That's extreme. But I got reached out by a tattoo artist that's in LA. And
is it a Meerkat?
Yeah, I'm sorry?
Is it a Meerkat tattoo?
Meerkat. You know how many times people ask me that, which is pretty funny. Then they thought it was my Twitter handle. So it was back and forth and I was not either one. It was my daughter's name. So, but I actually have an LA artist that has, you know, a little over 500,000 Instagram followers because of how many tattoo pictures and things that he does on Instagram. And I'm working with him on how he's going to use live streaming. And the crazy part about it is he's scared to death of video. But because he saw that there's unique value and ways that he can provide things to it, he's going to do that. He's going to embrace it. So I think from a tattoo artist to you have, you know, the Shark Tank folks that are getting on there. You have the Sports Center anchors that are doing it in between breaks. You have Hootsuite who handed their Periscope account to, you know, 14 different locations around the world. I think there's so much opportunity. It is no excuse that what your industry is. If you're B2B, B2C, if you're in the services. Robert, I know you asked. I can't remember whose stream you and I were both in, but you asked something about being in the services industry and how you know, how people are asking for the
Australia Wow. Australia Wow.
Australia Wow. It was growth hacking. Yes, Australia Wow was discussing growth hacking on here, and you asked, and I think like that kind of dialogue. I mean, how funny is that? So here's a great example. Robert and I are both, I would say, power streamers, right? We're on the camera very often. I was just referencing when we were both engaging in someone else's stream. So if you want to find out how to grow your following, how to to provide value, I will give a shout out. I have, Meerkat Stats gives me a lot of stats on information, and I know who my most popular commenters are, and who's watched the most of my streams, and I have some people. I have marketing hits, and in marketing, and Steven and Kristen Cardos. They watch my streams almost consistently, and I tell you what, they end up probably providing more value than I do on camera in my comments, because they engage with other people, they bring in people from other streams. So I mean, I think that's maybe a challenge back to people, is I actually would love Periscope and Meerkat both to find a way to put a tangible value on the people that are commenting, because I think this whole concept is null and void if you don't have engagement on your screen. Because then it's the same video blog that I've done for a year and a half. I can still talk in the ocean. I'm pretty good at talking, and I don't even need anybody to listen for the most part. But for me, the true value is that engagement. And I think, Robert, we just proved it in the fact that we were watching someone else's stream, asking Australia Wow Nathan questions, and that was us providing value and engaging. And I think that's where we have to kind of switch the conversations. I think there are still some people that look at the video and say, I don't have something good to say every day, and honestly, I don't either most of the time. So I think we have to kind of look at this as people that are engaging are just as valuable as those that are on the stream as well.
And to add to it, just real quickly, I just had this conversation, two things, with somebody yesterday, that going into other people's scopes and being involved in the conversation will get you followers, because they hear your conversation that you're having with the person who's actually scoping. And if you're asking the intelligent questions or answering and giving extra value, other people, they see you. And it's kind of like, oh, okay, that's a great point. Maybe I should, who is this? They tap the bubble. Oh, I'll follow him, maybe see what he's about. But, going back to the question you said, Kathy, about how many times a day and things like that. I just did a scope, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, and I'm probably going to do it again. We're so addicted to live streaming right now, whether it's Meerkat, whether it's Periscope, whether it's new ones that may come out. A lot of people, believe it or not, have forgotten about their other social media. Mm-hmm. And they're so, I can't even use the word, I get frustrated. It's like, hey, my clients, we talk about content calendars all the time. I set up a content calendar now for Periscope. What am I going to try to talk about each day? And, you forget about the other things, and you can't do that. So we have to reorganize and strategize all our social media, because I do content calendars literally for each one that I'm on, whether it's Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook. So each week I kind of have an idea of what I'm going to do, and that's how I coach and do with my clients. So now I got to add a separate calendar for Periscope, and we can't forget, because this has become addicting even on a personal level. I mean, Brian and I scope a lot. We're actually, I probably would say I probably am broadcasting maybe 2, maybe 3 hours a day, but then I'm also in other people's scopes probably another hour or 2 hours a day. It may not be the full scope, but I'm in there doing things. I sometimes I'm writing a blog, or I'm doing something, and instead of having the music on in the background, believe it or not, I find something interesting on Periscope and I leave it on and listen. So
I do the same thing. I was wrapping frames. I'm moving next week, and I was wrapping picture frames in my office, and I go and watch other, and I think that's also the learning thing. And Robert, you hit a really important point, and I have a question that came in via Meerkat. I want to ask that because I'm curious on your thoughts on that. But one of the other things that I think is really important is gaining followers on these platforms. I got interviewed by the San Diego news channel, and they asked me, why I was successful early on in this technology, and I simply went back very easily and said, I started building my Meerkat and Periscope community 2.5 years ago, and they looked at me like I was I had 4 eyes, and for me, I focus on engagement, providing value. I talk to my audience, with my audience, not at my audience. And if you do that on Twitter, if you do that on Facebook, you do that on LinkedIn, if you already are doing that, if you've already built yourself a community, it's not about building followers on these apps, in my opinion. It's more about how can I connect my community. Because one of the things I love about Meerkat that I really hope Periscope embraces is I want the call to action. Because at the end of a Meerkat, I have the option for a call to action. And that is very important to me because what I can do is, like right now I have it as LinkedIn or Instagram, but whenever someone's watching to the end of a feed, I actually can stop watching the feed. And as soon as the feed stops, it pops up with a button and it says, connect with me here or do something with me here. And I also follow everybody who comments on my Meerkats because it gets pushed to Twitter. And for me, I think leveraging that data and bridging your community is important. You can't, I mean, Robert, it scares me when people jump on one technology or one social network, and then the one that was their primary reason for building that following, they start disvaluing that, or I have a lot of people that say, well, now I don't need to use Twitter anymore. And you're like, no, Twitter was the reason you got successful on here, and if you're not providing value when you're not on camera, you're going to be quickly forgotten. And so the one question I had came up here, and it was from my friends over there at I Love Speed Share. They asked the question on privacy and security and things like with the NHL. And Robert, I'm curious to hear your thoughts, but I think the NHL screwed up. I think it's actually beyond ridiculous. First, because it's impossible for them to go around and find every fan that has a video phone up and say, are you meerkatting or periscoping, or are you just taking a video to download for your phone? Or are you doing a 6-second Vine versus, I mean, that is just ridiculous. And I think it's sad that they took that approach. But here's the other thing. We have to focus on this technology is not replacing live streaming. What it is replacing is it's giving you authentic views and unique insights on a stream that's unique. So I mean, nobody, in my opinion, and I'm a hockey fan. I played hockey in college. Nobody is jumping on a Meerkat or Periscope to watch a hockey game that normally would watch it on a paid TV channel. The only people that are getting on there are saying, hey, I wonder what that fan's talking about, or maybe there's a fight in the stands. It's a little bit of that element here, and that's why, for me, my philosophy across the board, no matter who's using this, think like a fan. Think like a fan, and that's what it is about. Think what access can you give your fans to that you have. So I'm curious, what were your thoughts on the privacy side of the house when it comes to, for me, I think the live element is huge, but people that are idiots. I mean, if you have a pay-per-view event and it's copyrighted, don't point the camera towards the copyrighted material. I streamed the entire fight, and you know what? Mine was never shut down. You know why? I never showed the TV. I had it pointing towards all of us cheering in the audience. They got to see all of us going like, oh man, and having a lot of fun with it because I was providing unique value. Because here's the deal: if you wanted to watch the fight that bad, you would have paid the $99 to do it. Or here's the other thing that really bothers me. It sounds kind of ranty, but I've watched pirated live streams forever. I'm an Apple fanboy. They had Apple. There was guys that went to Apple events with cameras embedded into their hats that were streaming it through Justin TV, streaming it through Ustream. So the fact that we're blaming piracy or the violation of copyrights on these technologies is just idiotic, in my opinion. I do believe you have to understand your rights, understand what you should and shouldn't do. But at the same time, I mean, people have been doing that forever. I mean, the fact that pay-per-view. I mean, I remember trying to watch. It was a Steelers game, and my power was out, and I tried to watch through my little brother's FaceTime, watch his TV, and watch my Steelers game, and that was even hard to do. So I think that, that's one of my pet peeves, that people that are either blaming security or overly stressing it and blaming this technology for being the only thing that's ever pirated a pay-per-view event. Give me a break.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, getting on what you're saying from that question about copyright and piracy and security and stuff like that, I agree with you. The NHL totally mishandled the situation, especially since they're using Periscope for the behind-the-scene type of situations.
Yes.
But they're refusing to have the fans do it. But the difference is that I agree in one sense with the copywriting and everything else that, here you got people paying to be on there. TV stations are paying millions and millions of dollars to have those rights. Now listen, if you're at a game, a baseball game, a hockey game, a football game, whatever it is, and you want to show your perspective, that's great. Show the fans having a great time. Show maybe a couple minutes of the game. Show, you're having a good time with your family there. Those are like 5-10 minute type of scopes and broadcasts. But when you're going to go to a game and you're going to sit there with your phone on, which first of all, if it's not plugged in, it's not going to make it the whole way. And you're going to broadcast the entire thing. It's another situation because now that's taking it over the line. Now you're trying to provide yourself as a, quote, TV channel and giving out the rights. So like what you did with the fight, Brian, I thought was brilliant. You know, it was on you guys. It wasn't on the TV. And it wasn't about that. It was just about getting a group of people together, having a great time, and sharing that with everybody else. Whereas there was one individual, I won't use names, but everybody probably knows him anyway, he actually broadcast the whole entire fight from his phone. He ended out with over 10,000 people watching the fight, and no wonder they shut him down, and no wonder I'm still hearing rumors that HBO and Showtime may be suing him. I mean, he's got the money to pay it, so it's no big deal. But that's like a scapegoat thing to say, you know, hey, you can't do this. We get $100 a pop, and you just gave it to 10,000 people live for free, the whole thing. Again,
well, I also put the onus on us, the viewer, and let's keep that in mind. We just gotta stop watching that crap. We need to stop watching people that aren't doing it, because you know what it does? It just hurts all of us. And it's the same thing on social media. Stop retweeting the people that suck at what they're doing. They're not providing value. Stop putting people on pedestals because they might have a name recognition. I think the interesting part about that is when we stop engaging, when we stop acting like we care about that stuff, they all of a sudden go away. And that we have the power to do that. We don't have the power to do that offline. And I always talk about bullies. You know, for me, there's nothing that gets me more frustrated than someone being a bully. But you know what happens when someone's a bully on social media? I report them on every channel. I block them, and I make it known, because you know what? We have the power. We have the power to kind of control that. And I was more disappointed that 12,000 people thought it was cool to go watch that stream, and then they complained that, you know, oh my goodness, this is going to be the end of Periscope. Well, no shit. You should have not been the person to get on there and support that at the end of the day. And so, I mean, that's the truth. I mean, I think we blame everyone else. We blame, but yet there's that many people that are engaging in it. And you know, sorry, that was you know.
It was a Brian rant.
It was. I know. I get a little passionate about that, because I really hate when people bucket things or ruin things for others, and I think that's something we can't, together we can make a big difference, but that includes good and bad, and we have to kind of keep that in mind for sure.
Well, okay, guys, I get a lot of scopes. Let me just do this one. I get a lot of people asking me on scopes, you know, what do we do about the trolls? What do we do about this? I said, listen, anytime new technology comes out, I don't care if it was Facebook, I don't care if it was anybody came out. They're great, they're good for marketing, they're great for personal situations. Well, whenever you get good, bad always has to be there. You can't have good without bad. It's how you handle it, and it's how you deal with it is another situation. Go ahead, Kathy.
So true. Well, I think we've got about 15 more minutes on the Hangout. But I wanted to ask you guys, because I did, when I asked people for questions, a lot of folks were asking about how to monetize or how to make money, or I think that's like the huge question everyone's asking. Like on Meerkat or Periscope, how is this gonna make money or what have you? So I just kind of wanted to ask you guys that question. So I'll go with you, Brian.
All right, I like that question, because I think this is one I talk about a lot on Twitter, and really my friend and mentor is Ted Rubin, talks about return on relationships. But for me, telling your story, sharing your value, and building a relationship is the monetization. And that sounds corny, but here's the deal: people buy from people they like, and people want to have a relationship. And when you look at someone in their digital eyeballs, not only does it humanize it, but it actually makes you memorable. And I think that's important. I also think there has to be a monetization play for both of these technologies. I've, for a long time, said, we're watching on Google Plus right now. You can see the TV over my shoulder. I would love the lower third ability on these technologies. I would say, give me the ability to have a lower third, and the price of that is that you'll be able to either pipe in your own sponsors that have on a ticker across the bottom, or maybe a sponsor that is, kind of like what YouTube would do, where the channel itself can push a sponsor in there, and if you're getting click-throughs or if you're getting things, they can monetize you yourself. Because I think there is a monetization play here, but I also I have sponsors for all of my events and all the things that I do, my podcasts and all the stuff that I do on here. And you know what I do? I give them shout-outs. I put their logo on the social share graphic. And you know what? And if it's important to me, I actually bring them into the conversation, because the problem ends up coming in that people think about social selling, and it thinks that you make the hard sell on social, and that's not true. You actually build a relationship just like you do on a golf course, just like you do on a happy hour, just like you do on an event, and then the hard sell comes when actually someone needs something or that engagement happens. And I think too often we kind of think of that. So for me, monetization right now is very early. But I mean, here's the deal: if you're not providing value and you're not doing it, if you're wasting your own time, you're probably wasting your audience's time too. And someone asked about commercials. I don't see commercials, but I would see someone that is like on an hour stream. I wouldn't be surprised that in the preview box or something that's in the thumbnail that all of a sudden a sponsor was able to put something over top of that, because I think that is something that I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of right now. What are your thoughts, Robert, on monetization?
Okay. There's a lot of conversation about how Meerkat and how Periscope are going to monetize. And to me, I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about me and my clients. At some point down the line, they're all going to figure out how to monetize it, whether it's banners, whether it's other things like that. Where I'm looking at is with my clients, with the coaching and the training, I literally started 2 weeks ago where I flipped the switch. Now, it took me 6 weeks to get there because I wanted to play with Periscope, get to know it, get to see what it's like, build a following, talk to people, get to know them. I've actually spoken on the phone now with probably about 40 or 50 of my followers from Periscope, because I've taken it to the next step where I've spoken to them on broadcast. Then I bring it to Twitter, because just because you follow on Periscope doesn't mean you follow on Twitter. So you bring it to Twitter, you get into direct messages, you bring it to phone calls. What I'm trying to get clients to do is build the relationships and engagement. Brian, you're 100% correct on that. And that's on any social media platform. It doesn't matter. It's all about engagement and building relationships. But at some point, those relationships need to be almost pushed a little bit to see if there's something else there. And what I'm starting to do personally, and I'm having my clients do, is they start talking about more their services and their products. Once you get that following, it could be a 15-minute clip about what you do, about what you charge, about what you get. And you know something? It's okay, because it's giving information out. And because, Brian, you said they're looking at your eyes, they're getting to know you. They've been on 10 of your scopes, 20 of your scopes, 40 of your scopes, and they got to know you already. So now you have the right to just say, guys, by the way, this is what I do. And, like I have a friend who I'm helping who is into food products. And she was like, I don't know what to do to get my stuff out there. It's one of the multi-level marketing ones. I said, well, if it's food products, why don't you cook? You got an iPad, set it up on the side, show what you're cooking, show you're using the products, and then you can turn around and easily and say, by the way, you can get these products on my website if you're interested, and check out other things. So I'm more concerned about my clients, because, that's, obviously me, and I don't mean to be selfish about that, but I'm not worried about Periscope monetizing and about, come on, look how long it took Twitter to monetize, and they're not even making a profit yet.
I agree. And, a quick story on that is, like I've streamed a lot, and I'm talking about writing a book, and I actually had a brainstorming of one of the chapters of my book on the wall behind me, and the interesting part was that just the fact that someone asked me about it. I explained the book. I explained that I'm going to do open collaboration. I want to get people involved. Someone that worked at a very, very big company that is in that productivity collaboration space ended up sending me a Twitter DM. We had a conversation. We've now gone back and forth. They're going to sponsor my book. And that was because I was meerkatting, not about that, but I was meerkatting about something else that actually talked about that. And to give a shout out on Meerkat, Tim, who is at Stoneham Press, he just tweeted out, and this is, I think, a perfect example. And Tim, I thank you already for this. He said, I would so buy Brian's upcoming book simply because of the relationship on Meerkat and because I value him and trust him. That is, so if he's willing to buy my book, it doesn't really matter what you end up buying, and I love that, Tim, and I'll end up probably sending you a free copy because that's just cool that you said that on public. But I think, for me, I think that's what people kind of forget on this is that the reason Gary Vaynerchuk had such a big influence on me, and that jab, 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 right hook, was that right hook oftentimes, if you're jabbing correctly, the right hook, you often don't even have to ask it. I didn't ask anybody to pre-order my book or to buy my book. Because I've been jabbing and providing value, they're asking me, when can I buy it? How can I buy it? So treat your streams like that, and I agree. Also, think about yourself. There's definitely an element of, if you want to, I talk a lot about, hey, how do you get your name out there? I have my hat who has my Twitter handle on it. I know, Robert, a lot of times when you're sitting in different places, you talk about clients or services, and you make sure you explain what you're doing. I think that's important. But Kathy, I see there other questions coming in as well, so I don't want to run off too long on that.
Yeah, because I know we've only have a couple minutes, and I want to say I totally agree with what you guys are saying. Like, the thing for me has been like speaking engagements coming my way that have been like someone saw me on Periscope or Meerkat, and they're coming, so it's interesting. Okay, so I think the last question is really going to be about what I wanted to be the last question is where do you guys see Periscope and Meerkat in 1 year? What kind of conversation? If we were going to do this a year from now, what do you guys think it's going to look like? What are things? What's going to be different? Just kind of like a little trend casting kind of thing. So I'll go to you, Robert.
It obviously this is all in our mind. Man, I am having so many computer problems today, and I am sorry about that. This is what happens when I get put to my room with my kids took over my house. It's hard to predict, and I see live streaming as it's not the future. And Brian knows I did this the other day, where Brian made a statement and said, "Live streaming's the future," and I tweeted him right back, and I said, "No, live streaming is now." About 5-10 minutes. Sorry about that. It's now. And where we can see ourselves in the future, it's hard to say because, with Meerkat's technology, with Periscope's technology, and all the new functionalities that are going to be coming into it, landscape mode, and how they, could they be monetizing next year? Depending how they set up that monetization of doing it, could deter people. It could be bad on their side. It could be good on their side. Prediction-wise, I see Periscope and Meerkat being almost, believe it or not, I think it's going to be like a 50-50. I think they both have great functions that the others don't have right now. I mean, I love the scrolling feature and the scheduling feature in Meerkat, but on Periscope, I like the simplicity of the way it looks. And it's just interesting. But thinking ahead, I think live streaming is going to get bigger and bigger. I think we're going to see, obviously brands are going to finally jump on board, and they're going to be wowed by the responses that they're going to get. Because now it's not just talking on a fan page and getting back to them. Now it's live interaction. Periscope and Meerkat for the future, I mean, it's hard to judge these things. I mean, especially if you got a third guy who comes along and blows them away with a way to do a /Google Hangout live stream where now you can exchange items in between each other, which, Brian, I know you've heard that a couple of times, where wouldn't it be nice to send a picture from one area to another while you're live streaming? These are all different functions that can come out. I don't think Periscope, a lot of people saying, oh, it's still a fad. Periscope's not disappearing. Meerkat's not disappearing. They're both going to have their sides of the market of what they feel is best. This is like the old Apple versus Windows. There are people that are diehard Windows people, and there are people that are diehard Apple people. And Meerkat, there are diehards, and Periscope, there are diehards. And all it's going to do is it's going to continue on. Those two are going to be the head streamers until somebody comes along and comes out with the next amazing thing, which could be, believe it or not, 6 months from now. It could be 2 years from now, but we don't know.
Yeah, for me, I actually think you're right on the comparison. I actually would go Android versus iOS in the sense that Periscope definitely has that iOS feel where They have Twitter's backing. They have the Apple, kind of like the iPhone, right? They have a very consistent model. They're going to release, when that 2.0 comes out, it's going to be an amazing product. It's going to be, it's going to be full of features and things that are going to work 100%. I see Meerkat as more of the Android, where they're going to innovate. I mean, I've tested out picture-in-picture functionality. They're going to continue to fail fast. But I agree, a year from now, I think they're both existing. I think there is a third player, but I also think that there's an element there where we need each other. I'm an Apple fanboy for sure, but I also love Android because I love their products, and I've used this example a lot. But I think we would be stuck with, if you use Apple products, it took until the iPhone 4S or to the 5 maybe to get copy and paste, which is like the most basic function ever on a phone, right? and I think we might not have got that until 2015 if it wasn't for Android pushing the envelope. And I think that competition is what's super important. So I think a year from now, I think our conversation isn't about where people are streaming or how they're streaming it. It's about, hey, how can I stand out from the noise, just like Twitter. Twitter right now is really hard to stand out from the noise, but when you do, it has amazing value. So I think the script will be switched. Like, if you go to a Broadway show a year from now, they're going to have a cell phone jammer on there. They're going to give you free access to Wi-Fi, but they're going to run their Wi-Fi like you do on an airplane. You can't stream on it because they're going to control the port access. And you know what? That's good, because you know what? The only way Broadway makes money is if you have butts in the seats and they sell tickets. Then why would we want to take that away from them? So I think that's the stuff we're going to see in a year from now. We're also going to see sporting events realize that things like Snapchat and things like the streaming actually are going to bring people back to live events. Because here's the deal. Before HDTV, of course we wanted to go watch a hockey game. Of course I went and froze my ass off at a Steelers game. But all of a sudden I have HDTV. I buy a 6-pack for what it costs me for one beer at a Steelers game, and I can sit on my own couch with my kids. Okay, now I'm going to have to evaluate that live sporting event. Well, what if I was able to jump on a live stream and we were able to stitch 10 live streams together and get a really cool, unique perspective from the stands? Or maybe they started streaming on the Jumbotron when a game starts, everybody that's doing a tailgate out in the parking lot. And I think part of that's what it is. Like, how do we think like a fan and bring that fan experience so that people want to be there live and do this live streaming aspect?
Yeah, it's like Neil Diamond, who's streaming his concert. Like,
you two did it as well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Awesome, guys. Well, it is 1 o'clock, so I wanted to thank Brian Fanzo and Robert Stern for this awesome debate, and hopefully we'll get to do it in a year, and we'll see what happens, right?
Yep, sounds great.
All right.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Bye.
All right, take care, guys, on the scope.